This is a main focus on the aviation assets for the US faction in Broken Arrow. There were multiple unit types of aviation available in the beta, but mainly I will focus on the Hornet and the Harrier. This video focuses mainly for beginner players who have never touched an aircraft and wants to figure out exactly how you use the aircraft and what it looks like in the differences. Mainly the key difference between choosing a Harrier or a Hornet is the quality and the price. Both of them can mostly carry the same ordnance and get the same type of delivery done on the job. But the Harrier is a much slower airplane with its unique ability of being cheaper, whilst the Hornet is slightly more expensive and faster, but way more agile. The exact difference of value when you bring one or the other aircraft to the battle map is one that one plane can accelerate a lot faster in climb and fall for its flight trajectory compared to the other. So the Hornet, being the faster one with its agile flight path, allows it to go high and low altitude to avoid radar systems, which usually are map wide. So when the airplane is performing its airstrike, it is good to be able to change its angle of approach. Having a more agile aircraft that also carry a lot of speed allows you to engage a target even when there's an enemy anti-air system present. What you need to do when there is an anti-air system present is that you need to be able to exit, avoiding the anti-aircraft system from securing a bullseye. Using a Hornet gives you a very nimble jet. The Hornet has a better angle turn, which allows an ease at varying your flight between high and low altitude. These altitudes affect radar and non-radar detection systems. Hornet therefore allows you to manually control the aircraft's airstrike a lot easier than the Harrier. If my opponent has radar systems such as a buck anti-air, I have to choose a direction of entry into the bombing run and then an exit after the airstrike. An important here is that the aircrafts are expensive, so if you lose your aircraft, it will set you off in time and resources. But if it's a successful and the aircraft is returned, you can keep churning out more dashes towards your opponent with air-to-ground strikes. So as you can see, the Hornet is a lot more surgical than the Harrier, which allows it to avoid the longer ranges of an anti-air when the anti-air systems are present. Such as Panzers or the Buck. You have a Buck there over, which has a radar system. And then the Panzer has a difference between radar and infrared rockets. As an example with the Harriers, I choose a lot of rocket-propelled ordnance as the Sufbars or the Hydras. If I want that tank, I will go with the Mavericks, which we have seen a lot more on the video before this one, which is a lock-on guidance system to hit tanks. Some other systems are dumb bombs or cluster munitions, such as the Rockeye, which is cluster that you just drop, and then MK82s, which is a high explosive ordnance that you drop that is more or less accurate, depending on what kind of attachment you choose. If you choose the Snake Eye, I believe it gets more accurate even when you drop it at higher altitudes. But the main difference also with high explosive weapons is that they come in either a bigger amount per unit on the aircrafts on its pylon wings, or that there is a heavier bomb but there are a lot fewer, and that is the difference between accuracy and inaccuracy. When we're also dealing with high explosive weapons, there is a area of effect damage, which is a lot smaller, for example with rockets, since they are more easily guided towards the practice of the game, but in reality also they probably have a tendency to dug into the dirt more than a regular bomb. But that's also obviously has a lot to do with the weather, if it's a lot of soft soil or heavy soil. If it's heavy soil, obviously the bombs are going to spread a lot better, and if it's soft, anything you drop on the ground is going to be going deeper, but I don't think they go that far into this game of realism. There's a lot of different ordnance that can therefore be used as aviation assets. Some are more expensive than the others, but I will avoid dwelling into the prices at this point, since it's the open beta is over and the prices may change when the live release of the game arrives. Essentially, you can divide the ordnance between anti-tank, anti-infantry, and mixed coexistence of anti-tank and anti-infantry in one and the same drop of ordnance. One of the fastest solutions to figure out the differences between the ordnance is what I've done here. These are high explosive weapons, these two, and the heavier they are, the more area of effect they will have an effect on when you drop them. But this means that you have fewer bombs. There's only 2 of these heavy ones on the 2000 LB, but they deal a lot of area of effect damage, which means they may be inaccurate, but they're probably then suitable for maybe hitting buildings rather than open terrain with caravans of enemy vehicles, compared to, for example, a rock-eye drop, which is 20 points cheaper on the same pylon, but you get more of them. You get 4 of these guys, and they spread out more evenly on one and the same patch of area. You cover a lot more terrain with the strikes. Even if the cluster doesn't maybe kill the tank, it can disable the gear, so the tank becomes either slower or completely disabled. So that has an effect in Broken Arrow, for example, that you can disable a weapon's gun, vision, or movement, compared to instead trying to get a 1-strike kill affecting a few units, but half of them still survive and reach the battlefield. You can spread out the clusters a little bit more and disable all of them, increasing the time for the opponent to reinforce a falling flank, as an example. And then here we have the typical Maverick, which is pretty good. It's a direct hit also, but it comes at a higher price and it's more surgical and precise. It also have a top side damage compared to the cluster, which is, I don't remember the cluster being a top side damage effect, but it definitely has a lot better effect on gear system. The last point I kind of want to wrap up the video is the specific understanding of the difference between infrared anti-air and radar system anti-air. The way to differentiate them is that the radar has a more map-wide coverage and has a little bit more damage when it hits the aircraft compared to the infrared, but it is unable to engage aircrafts that are below a certain height of altitude. While the infrared system is a lot more shorter, but it's unable to engage aircrafts at a map-wide size. And then obviously one of the ways to avoid getting hit by the radar systems, or maybe at many times also the infrared systems, is to use the ability in the game where you can manipulate the altitude of the aircrafts. One of the other ways to, as an example, avoid the infrared anti-air systems is by using jammer systems that reduces the lock-on time for a heat-seeking missile, or just having a stealthier airplane, which usually are more expensive, unless there is an attachment upgrade, which one of the Harriers have. Be sure, I think it's at 20%. One other way is to be using flares to prevent the lock-on, and which I've noticed when I play the game is that if you manually toggle the flares, it'll take longer for the enemy anti-air to be able to get a lock-on, rather than allowing the aircraft to automatically shoot the flares as the the time of the airplane progresses, and it does everything by AI standards. So manually shooting your flares is going to be more effective than allowing it to do it by automation of the game. Also, since the damage is more reduced, you could choose aircrafts that are slightly bulkier and can take more damage when getting hit. So you have this different unique role between all types of aircrafts, where it's either very tanky. You can also use the Russian Frogfoot, which I believe is called the Su-24. Or you could use some more faster aircraft like the Hornet that is a lot more agile, being able to change the altitude more frequently. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you learned a little bit more from this introduction. And if there's any questions, I'll happily answer them in the chat. Thank you.